The air. That's the first thing you remember about Nam. It's so heavy, so wet. It sticks to you. That day, April 7th, 1969, the air was heavier than usual, thick with the smell of metal and rotting rain. We were on patrol near the Aishao Valley, the Valley of Death. Silence was the enemy. A bird screamed. At least we thought it was a bird. Then the world exploded. The sound of an AK-47 is unmistakable. It's a sharp pop, higher pitched than the thump of our M16s.
Lieutenant Miller shouted, "Contact left." Just before the first round caught him in the chest, he just folded. Chaos. It's the only word. Muzzles flashing from everywhere. They weren't soldiers. They were ghosts in the bamboo. I emptied my M16 until the stock was hot, feeling the mud suck at my boots as I dove behind a fallen log. Next to me, Porky Jensen, a kid from Iowa, was trying to hold the blood gushing from his own neck. His eyes were wide. In 30 seconds, it was over. The firing stopped just as fast as it began. "Surrender, GIs, drop weapons," a voice yelled in broken English. I looked around. Miller, dead. Jensen, dying. O'Brien, God, O'Brien was in pieces. 5 of us were still breathing. 5 of us threw our weapons into the mud. When they stepped out of the trees, the NVA soldiers, their eyes scanned the survivors. They moved past the pale, scared faces, and then they stopped on me. One of them nudged the other and pointed. A slow, curious smile spread across the leader's face. In that moment, I wasn't just another American soldier. I was a novelty. I was the only one, and I knew right then that my hell was going to be different from theirs. This is a story few have heard. If you believe every soldier's voice deserves to be recognized, hit that like button and subscribe. What happened in that camp? It needs to be told. My name is Private Elias Eli Thorne. I was just a kid from Watts, Los Angeles. Enlisted in '67, figured it was better than getting drafted. Thought I was fighting for freedom. Funny, ain't it? A black man from South Central flying halfway across the world to fight for someone else's freedom when we barely had our own back home. I was assigned to the 1st Infantry Division, the big red one. My platoon was complicated. Most of the time we were just green. Green uniforms, green to the gills with inexperience. But the other color was always there, just under the surface. The jokes in the mess tent, the stares in the barracks, stuff you learn to swallow. In Nam, the front line was supposed to erase that, and mostly it did. The enemy didn't care what color you were, he just wanted you dead, or so I thought. The ambush that got us was brutal, fast, professional. Out of 12 men, 5 of us survived the initial capture. 4 white guys, and me. We were bound and force-marched for days, deeper into the jungle than I'd ever been, to a hidden camp. And that's where the real war began. For my fellow GIs, it was hell. For me, they saved a special kind of attention. That title, imagine being the only black man. Of course, I was the most tortured one. That wasn't a guess. It was a promise they looked eager to keep. The march was a green hell. They tied our hands behind our backs with thin, cutting strips of bamboo fiber that bit into our wrists every time we stumbled. And we stumbled a lot. The jungle floor was a conspiracy of mud, roots, and leeches. We weren't walking. We were being dragged. The NVA soldiers, maybe 6 of them, were small but tough as dried leather. They moved through the jungle like water, while we crashed through it like clumsy buffalo. The first few hours were a blur of pain and fear. Porky Jensen didn't make it past the first mile. He'd been gut-shot in the ambush, and the NVA had just grabbed him anyway. He was weeping, begging, "Please, I can't. The NVA leader, the one who had smiled at me, just sighed, like Porky was a minor inconvenience. He said something in Vietnamese. One of the guards, a kid who couldn't have been more than 17, pulled Porky out of the line. We heard a single pistol shot. We didn't look back. We just kept moving. Now there were 4. Corporal Davis, a tough-as-nails guy from Boston, was at the front of our line. Behind him was Private First Class Squeak Allen, a radio kid from Ohio who looked like he'd never even shaved. Then me. And behind me, Specialist Miller, no relation to the dead LT, who was nursing a broken arm. Every time I slipped, the soldier behind me would jab me in the kidneys with his rifle muzzle. Hard. But it was different from the shoves they gave Squeak or Davis. Theirs were impatient. Mine felt personal. We marched for what felt like 2 days. No food, just sips of brown water from their canteens when they felt like it, which wasn't often. The humidity was a physical weight, pressing down on us, squeezing the sweat from our pores until we had nothing left to give. My uniform was a second skin of filth. On the third morning, or maybe the second time was meaningless, we arrived at the camp. It wasn't a base. It was a hole. A clearing dug into the side of a hill, hidden by a triple-canopied jungle so thick you couldn't see the sky. Bamboo cages not much bigger than dog kennels sat half-sunk in the mud. A few thatched huts. The smell of charcoal, unwashed bodies, and despair hung heavy in the air. They shoved us into the center of the clearing. A man emerged from the largest hut. He wasn't NVA. He wore a clean-pressed green uniform, no insignia, and wire-rimmed glasses. He looked like a professor. He was the one they called the interrogator. He walked down the line, inspecting us like livestock. He looked at Davis's defiance, Squeak's terror, Miller's pain. Then he got to me. He stopped. He walked a slow circle around me, his boot heels sinking into the mud. He didn't look at me with the same tactical curiosity he'd shown the others. He looked at me with fascination. "Ah," he said, his English perfect, almost British. "An oidaden, a black man. This is a rare find." He put a hand under my chin, forcing my head up. I was exhausted, dehydrated, but I met his gaze. I wouldn't give him the satisfaction. "Tell me, soldier," he said, loud enough for all the guards to hear. "Are you fighting for the same masters who bomb our villages? The same men who would not let you drink from their fountains back home?" My blood ran cold. This was a different kind of war. "I don't know what you're talking about." I spat. The mud on my lips tasted like rust. He smiled, a thin reptilian expression. "Oh, I think you do." He turned to the guards and said something in Vietnamese. There was laughter. Not good laughter, it was sharp. They separated us. Davis, Squeak, and Miller were shoved into one of the bamboo cages together. It was a tight fit, but they were together. For me, they had something else. They dragged me to a post at the edge of the clearing. It was a strappado pole. They tied my hands behind my back, threw the rope over a high branch, and hoisted me up. Not by my wrists, but by my elbows, dislocating my shoulders with a sickening, wet pop. The pain was white. It wasn't a sound. It was a color. It was a blinding white light that filled my entire universe. I screamed. I couldn't help it. I screamed until my throat was raw. I hung there, my toes barely brushing the mud, my shoulders screaming in agony. The other 3 GIs were yelling from their cage. "Leave him alone, you bastards. He's a POW. Geneva Convention." Squeak was crying. The interrogator pulled up a small wooden stool. He lit a cigarette and sat just outside my range of vision, but close enough for me to hear him. "This is not torture, Private Thorne," he said calmly, his voice drifting through the white haze of my pain. "This is an educational exercise. The others, they are simple imperialists. They fight for a flag. But you are a tragedy. You are a slave fighting for your oppressor. I am going to liberate your mind." He took a long drag of his cigarette. "The pain will only stop when you agree. When you agree to tell your brothers back home the truth. When you agree that you are fighting the wrong enemy." I hung there for hours. The sun beat down. Insects the size of my thumb discovered me. They crawled into my ears, my nose. I couldn't swat them away. Every time my vision started to go dark, a guard would throw a bucket of brackish water in my face, the salt in it stinging my eyes, bringing me back to the agony. I could hear Davis still yelling, his voice hoarse. "Hang in there, Eli. Don't tell him shit." But the interrogator's words, they were their own kind of torture. He wasn't just breaking my body, he was trying to break my soul. He was using the very injustice I'd lived with my entire life, the injustice I'd tried to escape by enlisting, as his primary weapon. "They call you boy at home, don't they?" he'd murmur, stopping by on his way to the mess hut. "They make you sit at the back of the bus, and here you are hanging from a tree for them." Night fell. The jungle came alive with 1,000 screaming, buzzing, howling sounds. The pain in my shoulders had subsided into a deep, throbbing, colossal ache. They didn't cut me down, they just left me there, a piece of meat hanging in the dark. I was alone, surrounded by an enemy that saw me as a political tool, and separated from my brothers in arms who could only watch. This was only day 1. I don't know if I slept. I think I just left. My body hung from the pole, a useless sack of meat and bone, but my mind went somewhere else. I went back to Watts. I could see the heat rising off the pavement on 103rd Street. I could hear my mama humming a spiritual while she made sweet potato pie. I could smell the chlorine from the public pool, the one we were only allowed in on Tuesdays. I was floating, disconnected, until the pain brought me crashing back. It was dawn. The jungle slowly revealed itself in shades of gray, then a sickly green. My shoulders were on fire, a deep, grinding fire, as if the sockets were filled with broken glass. My arms, from the elbow down, were completely numb. I was dehydrated, my tongue a thick, swollen thing in my mouth. They finally cut me down. I didn't fall. I just collapsed, a puppet with its strings cut. I hit the mud, and the impact sent a shockwave of agony through my body that made me vomit bile. I lay there twitching. The guards laughed. One of them kicked me in the ribs. "Get up, Daden. Get up." I couldn't. I literally could not make my arms or legs obey. I was a prisoner in my own body. He kicked me again harder and I heard a crack. My rib. The pain was sharp, but it was distant, like it was happening to someone else. The interrogator walked over, sipping from a tin cup. Steam was rising from it. Coffee. The smell was agonizingly normal. "You see, Private Thorne?" he said, nudging me with his boot. "Your body is a cage. Your skin is a cage. Your country is a cage. I am simply making you aware of the bars." He motioned, and 2 guards hooked their arms under my armpits. They dragged me, my boots leaving 2 trenches in the mud toward a new cage. This one wasn't with the others. It was smaller, darker. It was a tiger cage, maybe 5 feet long, 3 feet wide, 2 feet high. It was meant for one man, and it was meant to break him. They shoved me in. My body barely fit. I had to curl into a fetal position, my knees pressed against my chest. The broken rib screamed. The bamboo bars were woven tight, and the roof was a piece of corrugated tin that I knew would become an oven when the sun got high. "Here, you will have time to think," the interrogator said. "Think about your position. You will have rice. You will have water. But you will have no dignity. That was taken from you long before you met me." He left, and I was alone. I could see the other cage across the small clearing. Davis, Squeak, and Miller. They were huddled together. They looked okay. Scared, but together. They were already forming a unit, a chain of command. Davis was clearly in charge. They were GIs. They were POWs. I was something else. I was the experiment. The first few days in that box were a blur of misery. The sun came up, and the tin roof turned the cage into a sauna. Sweat poured off me. The mud floor turned into a soupy, stinking mess of my own filth. I couldn't stand. I couldn't stretch. I could only lie there, cramping, my muscles knotting and seizing. My shoulders, still dislocated, ached with a rhythm, like a drum beat of pure suffering. They fed me twice a day. A guard would appear, kick the cage, and slide a wooden bowl through a small slot. It was always the same, a small hard ball of cold rice, sometimes with a few slimy, unidentifiable vegetables. It was just enough to keep me alive, just enough to keep me conscious for the pain. But the interrogator was relentless. He didn't just torture my body. He attacked my mind. He'd pull his stool up to my cage, just out of my limited line of sight, so all I had was his voice. "I read about your city, Los Angeles," he'd say, his voice conversational. "The fires, the riots in your neighborhood, Watts, your people rising up. And yet, you wear the uniform of the men who beat them down. Why?" I'd stay silent, pressing my face into the mud, trying to block him out. "It is a fascinating contradiction," he'd continue. "They ship you 10,000 miles to fight for a freedom that you yourself have never tasted. We are fighting for our homes. We are fighting to expel an invader. You are just the invader's dog. A black dog, yes, but still his property." His words were worse than the bamboo. They were precision-guided. They were aimed at the one crack in my armor, the one question every black soldier asked himself in the dead of night. What the hell am I doing here? I tried to fight back. "Go to hell," I choked out, my voice a dry rasp. He chuckled. "I am already here, Private, but you brought your own. Tell me about the flag, the one with the stars and stripes. Does it make you proud? Does it feel like your flag?" I could hear the other GIs sometimes. They were taken out for interrogation too, but it was different. I could hear them shouting, "I ain't telling you shit, go screw yourself," followed by the sound of slaps, maybe a muffled grunt. Then they'd be thrown back in their cage complaining about the slope being a bastard. They were being interrogated for military intel, unit positions, frequencies, strength. I was being interrogated for my identity. One afternoon, Squeak Allen, the kid from Ohio, was dragged past my cage. He'd just come from a session. His lip was split and his eye was swelling shut. He saw me, curled up in the box, covered in mud and insects. His face already bruised, turned pale with a different kind of horror. He didn't just see a fellow soldier. He saw an animal. God, Eli, he whispered, before a guard smashed him in the back with a rifle butt, pushing him toward the main cage. In that moment, I realized the interrogator's plan was working. He wasn't just torturing me, he was separating me. He was making me other. He was turning me from Eli, our brother-in-arms, into that thing in the box. Even to my own men, I was becoming a symbol of a suffering they couldn't or wouldn't understand. That night, the rain came. A monsoon. Not a healing rain, but a violent, cold deluge that turned the clearing into a lake of mud. It hammered on the tin roof of my cage, the sound so loud it felt like my skull was splitting open. The cage flooded. I was shivering, choking, trying to keep my head above the rising, filthy water, my broken ribs sending shards of ice through my chest with every gasp. I was going to die here. Not from a bullet, not in a blaze of glory. I was going to die in a box in the dark, drowned in my own shit. And the voice in my head, it didn't sound like my mama anymore. It sounded like the interrogator, a slave fighting for your oppressor. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms. No, I whispered into the storm, the word stolen by the thunder. No, he wanted to break me. He wanted me to believe I was alone. I had to hold on. Not for the flag, not for the army, for me. I had to hold on for Eli Thorne, because if I didn't, no one else would. Thank you. Here's Chapter 3. Chapter 3. I survived the night. I don't know how. Maybe I was just too stubborn to die. When the sun rose, the water in the cage had receded, leaving a new, thicker layer of stinking sludge. I was a block of ice, shivering so violently my teeth ached. My dislocated shoulders were a universe of pain, and my broken rib felt like it was trying to punch its way out of my skin. They left me in that box for 2 more days. The routine was set. The agonizing, baking heat of the day, the cold, insect-filled terror of the night, and the 2 meager balls of rice that barely kept my stomach from eating itself. But the worst part was the voice. The interrogator seemed to know when I was at my lowest. He'd come back with his little stool. He never shouted. He was always calm, reasonable. That's what made it so terrifying. He was a surgeon, and my mind was his patient. "Good morning, Private Thorne," he said, on what I guessed was the morning of the 6th or 7th day. "I brought you a gift." I heard a click, then music. It was a cassette recorder, and the song. I recognized it instantly. Sam Cooke. "A change is gonna come." I was born by the river, in a little old tent. My eyes welled up. The tears cut clean paths through the grime on my face. It was the sound of home. It was the sound of my neighborhood, of hope, of the struggle. It's been a long time coming, but I know. A change is gonna come. "Beautiful, isn't it?" the interrogator murmured. "A song of your people, a song of righteous anger. He is singing about the very men you are fighting for. He is singing about you." I squeezed my eyes shut. "Turn it off," I rasped. "Why? Does the truth hurt? Listen to the words, Eli." He was using my name now. "He is singing about oppression, about being kept down. And who is keeping you down? Is it the farmer in the rice paddy? Is it my soldiers who fight with bamboo traps and captured rifles? Or is it the man who sent you here?" He clicked it off. The sudden silence was as loud as the music. "You are not the same as them," he said, his voice dropping. I knew he meant Davis, Squeak, and Miller. They fight for a concept, an idea of America that keeps them at the top. You are fighting for the men who would lynch you if you looked at their sister. "Shut up," I whispered, the word broken. "You don't know anything about me." "I know everything I need to know," he replied, and for the first time I heard a cold anger in his voice. "I know that my village was burned to the ground by men in your uniform. My daughter was killed by a bomb dropped from a silver B-52. A bomb paid for by your taxes. Taxes you paid, but you still couldn't vote without a fight. Do you see the insanity of your position?" He kicked the cage. the clang vibrating through my bones. I am offering you a way out, not just from this camp, but from your own prison. Make a statement. Record a message for the radio. Radio Hanoi. Tell your brothers back home to stop fighting. Tell them their real enemy is in Washington, not in Hanoi. Do this, and the cage opens. You will have a bed. You will have food. You will be treated as a guest. I was trembling, not from the cold, but from a deep, profound rage that was so mixed with confusion, I felt like I was splitting in two. He was right. That was the hell of it. He wasn't lying. He was using the truth as a weapon. He was taking the pain I'd carried my whole life, the pain of segregation, the pain of Watts, the pain of being other, and he was twisting it into a spear. No, I said. My voice was stronger now. I won't. Why? He demanded. Out of loyalty? Loyalty to what? To them? He stood up and I heard him walk over to the other cage. Corporal Davis, tell me, what do you think of your black comrade? I heard Davis spit. He's a U.S. soldier, you bastard, just like us. Is he? The interrogator asked. Or is he just cargo? Something you brought along? When you get back home, Corporal, will you invite him over for dinner? Will you let him date your sister? Go to hell, Slope, Davis roared. At least I ain't a godless commie. The interrogator laughed, a dry, humorless sound. You see, Eli? You hear his words? Commie. Slope. He fights with insults. He fights with hate. He hates me. And he hates you. He just hates me more right now. He came back to my cage. This is your chance. Join the right side. The side that sees you as a man, not a mascot. Think on it. He left me with that. He left me with Sam Cooke ringing in my ears and the poison of his words in my heart. Later that day, something happened. A lesson. Just like he'd planned. I had a visitor. It was Squeak, the radio kid. He wasn't being dragged by a guard. He was on a work detail carrying a bucket of something. He walked past my cage and he hesitated. He looked around. The guards were at the other end of the clearing. He darted over to my cage. His face was a mask of pity and terror. Eli, man, I'm sorry, he whispered. He fumbled in his pocket and pulled something out. A piece of bread. A small, moldy-looking crust of bread. It must have been from one of the guards' rations. Here, he said, his hand trembling as he tried to shove it through the bars. But before I could take it, before I could even say, thank you, a boot came out of nowhere and kicked Squeak so hard in the stomach he flew backward. He landed in the mud, gasping. The interrogator stood over him. He hadn't left. He'd been watching. No, he said, his voice dangerously quiet. No, no, no. You do not feed the experiment, Private Allen. He looked at Squeak, then at me. You see this? This pity. This is what they offer you instead of equality. They will not share their power, but they will spare you a crust of bread. It makes them feel good. It makes them feel superior. He grabbed Squeak by the hair and dragged him to his feet. Take him to the pole, he ordered the guards. They dragged Squeak, who was now weeping. I'm sorry, to the same strappado pole I had hung from. They tied his hands. No, I yelled, my voice cracking. He's just a kid. It was my fault. The interrogator looked at me. Ah, you speak, but it is not your fault, Eli. It is his. He broke the rules. They hoisted Squeak up. His scream was thin, a high-pitched wail that cut through the jungle humidity. He wasn't as heavy as me, and his shoulders dislocated instantly. I watched, helpless, from my cage. I had to watch as a kid who tried to show me a moment of humanity was put through the same agony I had endured. But it was worse, because this was my fault. The interrogator had taught me a lesson. He wasn't just isolating me. He was proving that any connection to me was poison. Any pity, any empathy, any bridge between me and the other white soldiers would be burned, and they would be the ones who got set on fire. He had made me toxic. Squeak hung on that pole for 12 hours. His screams faded into whimpers, then into a low, choked moaning that was almost worse than the screaming. When they cut him down, he was unconscious, his arms hanging at grotesque, unnatural angles. They didn't put him back with Davis and Miller. They dragged him to a separate hut. We didn't see him again. The interrogator had made his point. I was a disease. After that, the other two, Davis and Miller, they wouldn't even look at me. I'd catch them staring from their cage, but if my eyes met theirs, they'd look away, fast. It wasn't hatred. It was fear. They weren't just afraid of the NVA. They were afraid because of me. The interrogator had successfully built a wall between us, stronger than any bamboo bars. He had me completely, utterly alone. I was in the cage for, I don't know, a week? 2? Time was a thick brown river of mud, pain, and hunger. My body was a ruin. The broken rib had set wrong, a hot, sharp knot in my side. My shoulders were a constant, dull explosion. I had dysentery. I was wasting away. I was just a thing in a box. The interrogator stopped visiting. He didn't need to. The silence was his new weapon. He'd done his work, and now he was letting the isolation, the hunger, and the fear of what happened to Squeak do the rest. He was letting me cook. I spent my days in a half-delirious state, drifting between nightmares of Watts and the waking nightmare of the camp. I was so weak I could barely lift my head. The hate I felt for the interrogator was the only thing keeping my heart beating. It was a small, cold ember in a pile of wet ash. Then, one morning, everything changed. I was woken by screaming, loud, defiant. It was Davis. I dragged myself to the edge of the cage. The mud was thick, but I had to see. They had Corporal Davis tied to a wooden frame, his arms stretched out. X marks the spot. The interrogator was there, and he wasn't wearing his professor-like expression. He looked angry, impatient. "For the last time, Corporal," the interrogator said, his voice sharp. "The frequencies for your artillery base. Where is your fire support coming from?" "I told you, you son of a bitch," Davis spat, his Boston accent thick. "I'm a goddamn grunt. I don't know shit about frequencies, and if I did, I wouldn't tell you." "You are a poor liar, Corporal," the interrogator said. He nodded to a guard who was holding a bucket. The guard stepped forward and threw the contents of the bucket onto Davis's chest. It was water. And salt. A lot of salt. The interrogator walked to a small fire pit I hadn't noticed before. He was holding something. A long, thin piece of bamboo, sharpened at the end. He held it in the fire until the tip glowed red. "No," I whispered. "I am a patient man, Corporal," the interrogator said, walking back to Davis. "But my patience has its limits. Your friend Eli has been uncooperative. I had hoped to make a friend of him, to show him the light, but he is stubborn." "What's this got to do with me?" Davis grunted, though I could see the sweat on his forehead. He was staring at the glowing ember. "It has everything to do with you," the interrogator said. He suddenly turned and walked over to my cage. He knelt down, so his face was just inches from the bars. His eyes were cold. "This is not working, Eli," he whispered, his voice full of disappointment. "Your individualism, your misguided loyalty. This camp, it is a laboratory. You are my hypothesis. And my hypothesis, that you are more loyal to your oppressor than to your own liberation, is proving correct. But I need proof." He stood up and addressed the whole camp. "We will now have a final test, a demonstration." He walked back to Davis. "This man, he feels superior to you, Eli. He is from Boston, a city where, I read, your people are chased in the streets. He looks at you, and he sees a tool, a piece of property, just as I said. Go screw your mother," Davis snarled. "Exactly," the interrogator said, so full of American spirit. He pressed the glowing bamboo ember into Davis's shoulder. Davis roared. It wasn't a scream. It was a raw, masculine explosion of pure agony. The smell of burning flesh hit me, even from across the clearing. It was the smell of a barbecue. Of pork. My stomach heaved, and I vomited the little bit of rice and water I'd had. "Now we try again," the interrogator shouted, his voice high. "The frequencies!" "No!" Davis screamed, thrashing against his bonds. The interrogator turned to me. "Eli, look at me. This is for you. This is your lesson. This man, he will not break. He is loyal to his cause. He has conviction. What do you have?" He gestured to the guards, who had been holding Miller back in his cage. "Bring the other one." They dragged Miller out. He was weeping, his broken arm dangling uselessly. "Please, I'm a medic. I'm just a medic." "This is your moment, Eli," the interrogator said, pacing between the two men. "This is your breaking point, or perhaps theirs." He held up a hand, and a guard brought him the cassette recorder. "You know what I want. You will sit here. You will record your statement." You will tell the world how your country has oppressed you. You will tell your brothers to lay down their arms. You will do this, or I will kill them both, right here, in front of you, one by one, starting with him. He pointed the glowing bamboo stick at Miller, who was now just a sobbing puddle in the mud. This was it. This was the moment. My mind was empty. There was no more Watts, no more Mama, no more Sam Cooke. There was just the smell of burnt flesh and the sound of Miller's sobbing. All my suffering. The pole, the cage, the insects, the isolation. It was just a prelude. The real torture wasn't for my body. It was for my soul. He was giving me the choice. My integrity, or their lives. What? What do you want me to say? I whispered. The words felt like sandpaper in my throat. The interrogator smiled. A true, genuine smile. He had won. Ah, he said, clicking the record button. You see? Liberation. It begins with a single word. He brought the recorder to the bars of my cage. Begin, Private Thorne. Begin with the truth. Tell them. Tell them who you are. I looked past him. I saw Davis slumped against the X-frame, his shoulder smoking, his eyes half closed in shock. I saw Miller crying in the mud, looking at me with a terrifying, pleading hope. I took a breath. The air tasted like ash. I put my mouth to the bars. My name is Private Elias Thorne, I said, my voice a dead croak. I am a soldier of the United States Army. The interrogator's smile faltered. And what's happening here? I looked right into his eyes. This ain't war. This is just you. That is not what I told you to say, he hissed, his face hardening. You said I'd tell the truth, I said, finding a small cold ember of my own. The truth is, you're weak. You have to do this, because you know you've already lost. Wrong answer, he whispered. He stood up. He walked over to Miller, who was too terrified to even move. The interrogator calmly pulled his pistol from his holster. No, I screamed, rattling the bars. No, wait, I'll say it. I'll say what you want. But I was too late. He wasn't listening. He wasn't testing me anymore. He was just done. He raised the pistol, not at Miller's head, but at his knee. He fired. The crack of the pistol and Miller's shriek were the same sound. That, the interrogator said, his chest heaving, was for your defiance, Eli. The next one will be for his head. And then, the corporal. This is on you. Your choice, not mine. Now, let us try again. He knelt by my cage, blood spattering his uniform. He held out the recorder. I was shaking, my whole world reduced to the muzzle of that gun and the red, screaming hole in Miller's leg. This was the moment. I had nothing left. No strength, no honor, no right answer. Just two men who would die because I was, what? Stubborn? Proud? I was nothing. I was just a black man in a box, a world away from home, and I was about to get my friends killed. I was looking down the barrel of my own soul. Miller was on the ground clutching his knee, the mud around him turning a sickening dark red. He was trying to scream, but it just came out as a choked, bubbling gasp. Davis was hanging on the X, semi-conscious, groaning. And the interrogator. He was kneeling in front of my cage, his face a mask of triumph. The pistol was still smoking in his hand. The recorder was in the other, its little red light glowing. Again, he said, his voice calm, but his eyes were wide, electric. Your choice, Eli. Their lives. For your words. Speak. I was empty. He had won. He had proven his point. My silence, my pride, was just a luxury that was getting my men killed. What was my integrity worth, measured in pints of Miller's blood? I started. My voice was gone. I cleared my throat, tasting ash. I looked at Miller. His eyes. He wasn't looking at the interrogator. He was looking at me. It wasn't hatred. It wasn't pleading. It was just terror. This was it. The moment I break. The moment I become the tool he wanted me to be. I licked my cracked lips. Okay. I'll talk. The interrogator's smile was blinding. He pressed the recorder closer. Yes. Tell them how you... Whump. Boom. The world ended. A mortar round. It landed on the far side of the clearing near the cook hut. The explosion was deafening. A physical punch to the chest. It sent a tidal wave of mud, shrapnel, and palm fronds over the camp. The interrogator was thrown sideways, dropping the pistol and the recorder, shouting, Vietnamese, English. Whump, boom. Another one. Closer. This one took out the main guard tower, which collapsed in a tangle of burning bamboo. AK-47s opened up from the tree line. And then, the sound I hadn't heard in weeks. The sound I thought I'd never hear again. The deep, thumping, beautiful bass of an M60 machine gun. Contact, contact, light 'em up. It wasn't a rescue. It was a firefight. The pistol shot, the interrogator's little bit of theater. He'd given away our position. An American patrol, maybe a long-range recon team, must have been tracking us, or just got lucky. My cage, my tiny, filthy prison, was suddenly the safest place in the clearing. Bullets were snapping through the air, green tracers from the M60s, red tracers from the AKs. It was a crossfire. The interrogator was on his hands and knees crawling. Not for the pistol, for the recorder. He grabbed it. His proof. He scrambled to his feet, disoriented. He looked at me, his face a grotesque mask of mud and disbelief. "You!" he screamed, his voice cracking. "This is your fault." He raised his pistol. He'd scooped it up and aimed it at me. He was going to finish the experiment. "Eli, duck!" I didn't need to be told. I'd already pressed myself into the mud. A 3-round burst from the M60 ripped through the clearing. It caught the interrogator in the chest. It didn't just kill him, it erased him. He exploded backward, a red mist, and hit the ground, his hand still clutching the recorder. I was breathing. I was alive. The firefight raged for another 10 minutes, but it felt like a lifetime. The NVA were caught between the patrol and, well, us. They were routed. The sound of M16s got closer. "Check the cages! Check the cages!" A boot kicked my cage, not a kick of torture but of impatience. "Anyone in here? You alive, GI?" "Yes," I screamed, my voice raw. "Get me out, I'm alive." A kid with a face painted green and black carrying a shotgun blasted the bamboo lock off my cage. "Holy shit, man, we got one." He reached in, grabbed my arm. "Come on, we gotta move." I tried to stand. I couldn't. My legs were just gone. I was a ragdoll. My arms, I gasped. My shoulders, I can't. "He's hurt. Get Doc." Another soldier, a sergeant, was already at the X, cutting Davis down. "He's alive. Faint pulse." I just lay in the mud, half in, half out of the cage. The rain started again, a gentle drizzle this time, washing the blood and mud from my face. I looked over at the interrogator. He was just a pile of wet rags, his hand outstretched. The little tape recorder was just inches from his fingers, its red light still on, recording the sounds of the gunfire, the rain, and me. 2 medics were working on Miller, frantically applying tourniquets to his shattered leg. He was pale, but he was breathing. The sergeant who'd cut Davis down came over to me. He was black. He looked at me, at the cage, at my dislocated shoulders, and his face hardened into something I knew well. It was a rage that went deeper than war. "What?" he said, his voice low and trembling. "What did they do to you, brother?" I tried to answer. I tried to tell him about the pole, the cage, the voice, Sam Cooke. I tried to tell him that the bullets were the easy part, but no words came out. I just closed my eyes, and for the first time in weeks I wasn't in the jungle. I wasn't in the cage. I was free. I spent 6 months in a hospital in Japan. They had to re-break my shoulders to set them right. My rib healed crooked. I've still got a hitch in my side when the rain comes. Davis and Miller both made it. Davis was quiet, never talked about what happened. Miller lost his leg, but he'd send me a Christmas card every year from Ohio, without fail. Squeak. We never found out what happened to Squeak. He was missing in action. I got a Purple Heart. They flew me home. Back in Watts, nothing had changed. The buildings were still burned out from '65. The cops still looked at me with the same hard eyes. But I had changed. The interrogator? He was wrong about everything, but he was right about one thing. My war was different. He tried to use the color of my skin as a weapon to break my mind, to separate me from my men. But in the end, he's the one who brought us together. The moment Squeak tried to give me that bread, the moment Davis refused to talk, the moment Miller took a bullet meant to break me, that's when the interrogator's whole theory fell apart. He thought he could use our division, but he only proved our unity. He thought he could make me a symbol of oppression, but he only reminded me what I was fighting for. It wasn't for a flag, and it wasn't for the politicians. It was for the man next to me. My name is Elias Thorne. I was a black man in a cage, but I was never, not for 1 second, alone.